Okay, this first piece I wanted to perform is called Hip Hop and Bop. And we sort of combine hip hop and bebop kind of styles and try to blend them together in a melodic fashion.
And with us today is Wes, the drummer. How are you?
Oh, doing great. I'm really happy to be here. This is a lot of fun.
Great. So when did you start drumming?
That's sort of a tricky question. There is a picture that exists of me at 2 years old with my mother with a little toy drum. The next thing I remember about drumming was when I was in kindergarten and we had a little rhythm band that would go to another room up some steps every Friday, and we would all play the little instruments. And I had always wanted to play the drum because there was only one drum and everything else was like a ticky ticky shaky shaky thing, and that just didn't look quite as much fun. And I said, you know, please, may I play the drum this Friday? And she'd always pat me on the head and tell me, I already promised it to Billy or Michael or somebody like that. And I never got to play the drum for all of kindergarten. So I always wondered how that influenced me, especially when 1 year later, when I was in first grade, it happened to be a certain Sunday in February, and the Ed Sullivan Show came on, and this group called the Beatles was on, and everybody was screaming, and it was the most exciting thing of my childhood. And that hooked me. You know, I mean, my parents were like, grabbing me back from the TV. This back in the day, some kids would always try to watch the TV from that far away, and that really did it. And as you know, if you look back through history, instrument sales just like were staggering after that event. That was one of the biggest social events and music makers there was, as far as influx of new people wanting to learn an instrument. So those are my earliest memories and recollections, and about why I do what I do now.
Great.
Yeah. But
How much does it usually cost to get started in drumming?
some people like to start with a practice pad, which is just a rubber or some other kind of material, and you can beat on it and it doesn't make the sound. I do teach about 40 students, and I think a practice pad is something every drummer should have, but it doesn't take the place of a drum from the point of view of a kid wanting to play a drum, because it goes bang and boom, and then you give them something that sounds like this. That doesn't do it. So I do tell the parents, start with a practice pad, which is only, $20, $30, and but then don't have a self-fulfilling prophecy where they stop practicing after 6 months, and you say, see, you weren't really interested because you weren't giving them the real instrument. It's like you wouldn't send a kid to take piano lessons and all you gave them was a cardboard cutout of piano keys. Okay, so there is that side of it too. At the same time, a practice pad, very inexpensive, is a necessary part of our repertoire of what we need for practice, but it's not the instrument. With that said, all the major drum companies, and there are many international companies, so there's still some really good ones in the United States. Japan is known for some. They all have different price points, and you can get a beginner kit, a little bit past beginner kit, all the way up, usually 5 or 6 different levels of quality and different price points. And so probably the inexpensive kits that are being made, the competition is so fierce there, they're better than they've ever been. And you could get a kit of drums for under $500 and have something nice to start off with. If you're going to start playing with people, it might not sound and feel like you want it to. And typically all of us buy more and more drum sets and replace other ones too. But you can spend up to $10,000. Cymbals are the other half of the equation when you're pricing drum sets. And the same thing, there are a lot of great cymbal companies out there, and they have different levels and quality, and you can pick these, and then your ear tends to get more discerning, and you decide, oh, I need to replace that cymbal. And the neat thing with cymbals is you can replace them one at a time. They do sell them in packs too, a lot of times, but you can replace them. Whereas you did that with a drum, it would be much more expensive because they come as kits. But these are dream cymbals. They're made in China, and it's a company out of Toronto full of incredible people, incredible percussionists, and they're not as expensive, and they really get all the sounds I'm looking for.
Awesome. Who or what are your inspirations?
Well, the Beatles, Ringo. When I was 6 and I saw him up there on this throne, up on a pedestal, and he's bopping his head around, and he has a big nose like me. I mean, that did it. I just always wanted to be Ringo, and no substitute for that. In fact, I can't think of any cultural, social, musical event that has happened since then that affected so many people and wanted, make them play an instrument because they identified with one of those. And you probably didn't even know, but there used to be Beatles cartoons.
Oh, right.
And yeah, maybe you did. I have them all bootlegged. But Ringo was always the funny one, and in the movies, and that touched a nerve too. But beyond that, as far as other serious drummers, I've gone through lots of periods of loving so many different drummings, and now I can't even really name them or list them. There was a time when I was younger I could list them 1 through 20 of my favorite drummers. Steve Gadd and Billy Cobham are the quote contemporary drummers that I think have influenced more drummers than anybody, and they're also very much my favorites. And I got to work in workshops with Steve Gadd just in June in Montreal, at a drum camp called KOSA, K-O-S-A, and that was one of the thrills of my life because he was this far away, and I get to see him play and talk with him. And I did the same thing at a camp 3 years ago with Billy Cobham in Arizona.
Great. For you, why the drums?
I started in a little bit of piano lessons. It didn't catch. Wish it had, because piano is so very important for all music. And the little flutes in 4th grade, we did that. And once we got past like 3 notes, this was just too boggling for me. So I've always been doing this. Although I didn't get a college degree in drumming. I let everybody talk me out of that. And was actually in graduate school in business before I said, I really want to be playing drums. So I left that program in 1980 and have done my whole living performing and teaching drums since then.
Okay. What kind of things do you plan on doing in the future?
I still want to get better. The interesting thing about drums is it's one of the easiest instruments to teach or to learn to play simple patterns that are used on world famous recordings. So, you know, like I would love to try to teach you, maybe later we can do that, play you to learn a simple beat, and then I can say this is on all these albums.
Right.
But so you can play maybe half the songs out there if I teach you 3 beats. The other half of it's infinite as far as what can be done and is being done by so many drummers and so many styles. And I find that fascinating. It's just like, you know, peeling an onion. There's just so much more underneath. Every time you learn something new, there's so much more to learn. And that's the real beauty. Anything is beautiful like that, if it's like that. And some people, and I find more, I hate to say it, but more as in modern times, attention spans are a little less, you know, maybe because we're all on our phones and all this kind of stuff. And they're, you know, I'll now have occasionally a student come and say, well, you know, will it be 3 months or 6 months before I can be a professional? And, you know, that kind of attitude where it's just got to come without effort and all that. And I also have a lot of other young people that are just like super dedicated, way more than I was, and they're practicing for hours a day, and they get it and they see what it's about and the beauty of it, you know.
Awesome. Okay, last question. What is the most difficult thing about being a drummer?
I think about being any musician is the whole idea of being self-employed. And you have to realize I, in this case, am a musician that's self-employed, and I have my own independent business. So it's not all about just going out and playing and having fun all the time. I love it. I love playing more at my age now than I did when I was your age. But at the same time, it is a business, and there's certain rules we want to remember about a business. We want to be diversified so that all the eggs aren't in one cart. If one thing goes wrong, it doesn't make everything come tumbling down. So I play a whole lot of styles, and I think that's always been where I want to be with my drumming. I want to play, you know, rock and funk and jazz and different world musics and all that. So I get called because of that, because I can play a lot of styles. I don't consider myself the best at any one style, you know, even in our region by any means, but I can go from one to another and generally be convincing in that style and have something to say. So that's the other thing is keep your receipts. You know, we pay taxes, and you got to keep all your records and receipts and all that sort of thing. It's all about being a business person, not first, but it's got to be up there in your mind when you're doing your art. And another part of diversifying is teaching. So I'm now pretty well split, generally 60-40 or 40-60 in any given year, my income from teaching and from performing. And I perform maybe with about 10 different groups pretty regularly. Some I'm first call, some I'm down on the list somewhere. And then I teach even within teaching. I teach at Goucher College in Towson, Maryland, and I teach out of my home studio too. And right now they range in age from 7 to I think 75 is wow. My student load. And the fastest growing demographic for new students is middle-aged women. And I'll stretch that definition of middle-age, I'll say from, 30s to 70.
Right.
So, which is a very interesting phenomenon going on, and which I really appreciate, too, because a lot of women, some of those ages, were not allowed to play drums when they were younger.
Great.
With me is Zamia, and Zamia said she wants to learn to play a drum beat. Let's see how easy we can do this. You stand up, I'm going to hand you the sticks, have a seat, put one foot on each of the pedals. All right. And so there's really only two things to learn this very basic beat. It's called a two beat. And if you'll put your right hand stick over on the hi-hat, left hand stick on the snare drum, your feet are on the pedals. Now play the right side of your body at the same time. Hit with the right hand and the right foot at the same time. Can you do that? Do it again so you see what it feels like, right? One more time. Now, let's do the hands together. So this right hand will hit the hi-hat, the left hand will hit the snare drum. Can you hit your hands together? Do that again. See what it feels like? So now, if we do rights, do the rights again. Now just the right hand and right foot. Now the hands. Yeah, you have to think. It's good. Think about what you're going to do and practice it in your muscles, right before you do it. So the rights, hands, rights, hands, rights, hands, rights, hands. Now do it on your own, going back and forth. Right? Yeah, try it again. You get right back on. Don't go faster than you can think about it for right now. Awesome! So Zamaya is playing a two beat. This next piece is 3 or 4. And I think the best way to listen to this is to think of an Escher sketch or an Escher drawing where you look at the picture and you're saying, wow, are the stairs going up? Oh, now I look at it this way, they're sort of going down. And what I want to do is try to make you orally, with your ears, hear this piece having a beat in different places. And I can dictate that a lot with my left hand. And I'm going to narrate through this piece, so it's not a performance piece as such today. But first off, we'll start one limb at a time. And let's start with what might sound like the beat right here on the cymbal. We'll bring in the hi-hat on the off beats according to this cymbal. Now this should sound fairly straightforward at this point, but if we bring in the bass drum, you're going to hear something different. So now you have to decide, is the beat here with the cymbal? Would it be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, or is it down here in the foot? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And my left hand playing on the snare drum and other drums can make you hear it different ways. So, for instance, here we'll do it in 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now I can hit on every second bass drum, and you'll hear it in 4. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll go back to 3 and I'll start improvising now. So it's just a little bit of improv. Now I'll switch over to 4 kind of a feel. Right here, I'm hearing it as triplets to the beat. If I start accenting every 4th note and put that on the cymbal, I will morph back to how I began in 3. Back into the feel of 3. Back to 4. Back to 3. Now we'll slow it down, which is actually one of the hardest parts, to keep all the gears of the clock moving exactly right.